Well, good morning and welcome to Valley Views. I'm your host, Glenn Edison. We're certainly glad to have everyone today, and with a special thanks to BTC Fiverr for sponsoring our program. And today we have with us Ally Pursley, and Ally is a local author, and we want to talk about her writing experience and some of the things she's got coming up in the near future. So Ally, it's good to have you today, and thanks for being here.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
First of all, in our previous conversation, you said you've written 3 books and on the 4th, right? And I guess I ask all these to a lot of, especially the students I had, what got you interested in writing? What?
I think it was just like from a young age, I had a very active imagination, and I made up stories all the time, and I didn't like to read. So I made up stories all the time, and then as I got older and as I got in high school, I started to love reading Shakespeare and poems, and I mean just everything in that type of genre. And it really inspired me, like, hey, I have all these ideas, I'm just gonna start like writing them down, and that's how I really got into writing.
Well, I know a lot of people sometimes are afraid of writing. I think that writing is really hard.
Yeah.
And I guess it is to some.
Yeah.
But you know, when you get into the creative part, you get to kind of be your own boss. And
yeah, I think it's really nice to have like creative liberties. And the thing that helped me the most with like writing and like not being overwhelmed by the books was I didn't write it in the like right order. I didn't write chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I jumped around and then put it all together and filled in the blanks. And that creative liberty was what I needed to put everything together and to write it all out without it being like too overwhelming.
Right. I noticed recently some articles I've read about planning your books out, and sometimes in those articles it talks about you might write the beginning, but then you might write the ending.
Yeah.
And then so that's a big part of writing.
Yeah, I think for me, because I put a lot of my emotions into the characters while I'm writing, especially the main character, and I think for me it was really important to like write the right parts when I was having the right emotions for it.
Right.
Like it's hard to write like a really sad like moment if you're like really happy and yeah.
Right. Yeah. I found that to be hard too.
Yeah.
In my writing, it's hard to write that when you don't feel that way.
Mm-hmm. And another thing I learned, because I started these series of books when I was really young. I was 14 when I started the first one. And so what I've learned more than anything is the more you write, the better you get at it.
Get right.
So I think I've rewritten the first book like 6 times because I started when I was so young and I wasn't as good as I am now. So as I got older, I was like, well, I'm going to fix this and that and this and that. And now I've gotten to the point where they're really good, and I really like love the finished product of them. Yeah.
Do you ever, in your writing, do you ever go back and look at it and go, why did I do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I've got an editing team now, and they'll send me like little clips back, and they're like, what is this? And I'm like, you're right, I don't know what it is either. Because I think my biggest like fault in writing is because I can see everything in my head so clearly that I will skip details. Because in my mind it makes perfect sense, like what's happening is like exactly the way it's supposed to be, but then when someone else reads it who doesn't know everything that I know, they're like, how did we get from point A to point C?
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
It really is, because I know what you're talking about when you got it in your head, but you don't always get it down. Yeah,
because you know what you're writing makes sense, but then to other people they're like, yeah, I didn't really get that, and you're like, okay, I'll cut in more, I'll explain more. And it was difficult sometimes to like, because before I wrote the books I had like a bunch of like plot points for all the different books like already laid out, and it was hard to go back and like connect those through like a story, because you can't just say, well, this happened and this happened and this happened. It has to be a story. But overall it was an amazing experience, and I love my characters so much. I'm so attached.
Right. Well, I was too when I wrote my book. We actually all became a character in that book. So
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I really wrote the main character with a lot of emphasis on like my life and what I went through, and so I'm very attached. So some people ask me like, "Well, you gonna like write on something else or do something else?" I'm like, I don't know. I really like my characters.
Well, you know, we get attached to them.
Yeah.
We did the book that I wrote, and you become a part of the book, and that's interesting to me. Were there any particular, as you were growing up, any particular authors or writers that you liked that inspired you?
Neil Gaiman. He has written many books, and he is such a good author. He wrote a book on Norse mythology, which was amazing, and he wrote a book with someone else that was about like, it's called Good Omens, and it was so good when I was growing up, and they finally made it into a TV show.
Oh.
But him and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle with Sherlock Holmes. That's what really got me into like stories, and I still read them to this day. And he's probably my favorite author, and he has a lot of good short stories outside of Sherlock too. Yep.
Well, and I've always found out in some of the things that I've written, when you give life to these characters, you can make that up, and they can be anything you want them to be.
Yeah.
And that's the fun part about writing.
And you can make anything happen.
Yeah. Right, even if it's not real.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned your genre, you like romantic fiction, is that right?
Yeah.
Is there any other genres that have influenced you?
Romance fiction is a big one, and I like inspirational stuff too, because although my books are strictly romance fiction, I feel like it's important to not just have like a romance story. I like the books to have like a meaning and a purpose behind them. Like, sure, she's like going through like this situation and she's gonna end up with like a great guy, but like the character development that the character goes through in the book is super important to me. So like inspirational books, and I love a good mystery.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I've always found out if you can write a good mystery and lead people on, they'll sit there and read it, and they'll actually they'll be into it before they realize it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what you want.
Yeah. Get them hooked, and then they have to finish it.
Yeah. Now you mentioned you finished 3 and you're working on the 4th one.
Yeah.
And when will we see those come out?
The first one will come out May 2022. It was supposed to be 21, but with the COVID-19 thing, everything's kind of been pushed back. But the books will be available in May. It will be available at Target May the 13th, 2022, and on Kindle May the 17th, 2022. Yeah, I'm excited exclusively to sell through Target and Kindle.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, and that's good.
Thank you.
Because I know I was just in Target yesterday, and I happened to walk through and I saw all their books, and they're just a vast amount of books.
Yeah.
There's a lot. So if you can get into those big box stores, that's good. I mean, the people see that. Are you going to do anything locally when they come out? Are you going to have any book signings?
Yes, I have. The company that I'm with has assigned me a whole like book tour. I'm going to a bunch of different states, but I have one that's in town at the. I'm hoping it'll be at the library, but it'll be in town, and then I have another one that'll be in Chattanooga.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
good.
Right around the same time that the books come out.
Are you going to be at any of the maybe the bookstores or anything?
I hope so. I think the one in Chattanooga will probably be at the Barnes and Noble at Hamilton Place. Yeah.
I know. When I did mine, that we were at Barnes and Noble, and that was a big thing for us. You know, and I'm sure you're excited about this.
Yeah. I'm so excited, and everything's been pushed back, and now I'm like, it's coming. I promise, it's coming. But
well, and you're doing something that 99% of the people can't say that they've done, is write and publish a book.
Yeah. And it's been a lot of work. Like I said, I think I've rewritten the first book like 6 times, because it's just it's so much to get in there, and all the books are like 30 to 32 chapters. And so, I mean, that's so much work that goes into it. But once you get it done and you like sit back and you're like, yeah, I really like this. Like, I'm happy with the like final product. It's a great accomplishment.
Well, I know a lot of people think in writing, or they have the misconception writing, you just put stuff down, it's ready to go. But there's a lot of hours put into that, and a lot of work.
Yeah. I've got a binder here, and this one on the top is the original copy of all the books, because I wrote them by hand.
Oh,
and
really?
then I transfer them onto the computer, But this is the original copy, and then in this binder is full of notebooks upon notebooks of just research and like details about the character, like their hair color, eye color, like names, their family background, and then I did a bunch of research on like record labels and like Australian beach houses for the book. I mean, everything just takes so much detail, and I didn't want anything in the book that wasn't like real.
Right.
Like, I didn't want you to read this and then you're like, yeah, that all makes sense and stuff, but like this one part, like, is that like plausible? Everything in the book, I tried really hard to keep it real to what you would have here. Yeah.
Well, that's the key too. I was going to mention or ask you about the research, because you want to make sure that when you write something, you can't just put it down.
No.
You got to. Because a lot of people say, "Well, that's not true."
Yeah, or that's not right.
Yeah.
No, I did years of research, and I mean, and I enjoy that part of it. So, and I also found some local artists from Dunlap and Dayton and Crossville and Chattanooga that's going to be submitting artwork of the characters that'll be in the books.
Oh, great.
And that's what really, like, I would get that, and then I would do a bunch of research, like, hey, this is what they should look like. But I think everything down to, like, real, like, stores and, like, salons and stuff like that in the book has to be researched and written down and, like, information on it. That way, if you go back and you're like, hey, I need to write this part again, or you're like, hey, I need to change this, you have all those notes and stuff on it for you to reference back to. It's very important.
Right, and one thing you mentioned about the research on the characters, like, hair color and body style and physique.
Yeah.
All those things, they're there for a purpose, and that's for the reader to respond to those characters.
And connect with them.
Right. So they can actually see them in their own minds, so relate to them.
Yeah, and that's super important. I related to my characters, and I wrote them to hopefully relate to everyone who reads them. And for everyone who reads them to not just read like a romance fiction novel, but to take something out of the book.
Right.
Yeah.
And well, that's the key, when people can actually sit down and read it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Then you've done your job.
Yeah.
And I know that it's hard. A lot of it is it's time consuming, and sometimes you think, why am I doing this?
Or you get writer's block and you're like, I can't finish, I can't do this. Yeah.
Yeah, the writer's block, that's sometimes I've had to take things and just put them away and let them sit so I can concentrate on them.
Yeah, for me, I had a bunch of like music that I like to listen to like inspire me into the story, and so every time I had like really bad writer's block, or I couldn't think of what needed to be there, or how to connect the storylines, I went back and would listen to that music.
Oh, yeah?
And it helped me so much. Yeah.
Well, that's neat. That's a neat idea.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I know my students in school, they always told me they couldn't think of anything, but I think that was just because they didn't want to write. But, well, that's good. What kind of advice could you give to maybe younger students or anyone about writing if they wanted to start writing?
My biggest advice, or two pieces of advice, is number one, don't let anyone tell you the way you do it is wrong. I mean, of course there's errors, like grammar errors, spelling errors, but like, I had a lot of people tell me when I first told them that like I wanted to write a book, and I was like telling them how I did it about like writing differently. They were like, no, you can't do that. Like, it's not going to make sense. I think it's important for you to write in your style, and then it can be fixed later. But if you get it on paper, then you've made massive amounts of progress. And my other thing is don't think you're too young. That was my thing when I got like done-ish with them. I was like, well, I'm too young. Like, no one's gonna want to like publish this. Like, because when I got done, I was just 18. And so, don't think that you're too young, because age has nothing to do with talent.
Right. Exactly.
And don't force yourself to write in a different style because you think it's right.
Right. I mean, that was a key for me. It's getting all that out of the way.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, a lot of people. I found that they're hesitant because they just don't think they have the talent.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, putting it down on paper and just getting it down.
Yeah.
Because you can work on all the fine tuning later.
Yeah. Just if you can get it down on paper, that's amazing. That's why I mean, more than anything, just getting it down, you've done more than a lot of people do. And your talent shows through that.
Well, and one thing you mentioned about handwriting.
Yeah.
If you handwrite, unlike a computer, if you don't like something, you go back and change it. Then you erase it, and you forget what words you used. Because I know I've done that myself in handwriting, and forgot, I like that other way better.
Yeah.
And you forget, but if you handwrite it, you can actually go back and look at how you word it.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed, even though I had, like, when I first started writing, I didn't have a computer to type out on. I had to handwrite it. But even with this fourth book, I'm handwriting it in the notebook because I feel like that way it's more personal to me. I feel like if I do it on the computer, it's like a lost connection. Just writing it out and having it in my words and making notes on the side as I write just helps me write and helps me keep a good flow with the writing.
Well, and that way, if you crash, you still have your
I'm not lost anything yet.
So that's the good thing, because I know I worry about that from time to time on my own stuff.
Yeah.
My computer crashing and things like that. It bothers me.
Yeah.
Well, we've already talked about your research. When you sit down and write a story, or start to write your book, do you plan it out? Do you think about how many characters or who you want and the storyline? Does it take you a while to get all that squared away?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I do is I don't feel like I overdo it, but I do it a lot. I pretty much have everything planned out. Like on like a board, I will write out like this happens with like this person, then this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. So by the time I sit down and write the book, I'm really just putting in details and connecting the storylines. The book is kind of already written, as in the plot and stuff. I'm very like meticulous about what's going to happen, where it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and the exact order of it. Yeah.
And you know, I found that by doing that, that also helps. Like in college, for example, when you write your papers, or even in high school and middle school, by planning out, you have a beginning, a middle, and an end.
And you know what the goal is you're trying to reach when you're writing. Like if you plan out the plot points of the book, then even if you get some writer's block and stuff, you're like, well, I know what the goal is. I know where I'm trying to take it.
Right.
Yeah. It helps a lot than just sitting down and more blank canvas.
Right. And to me, that was in a book that I'm currently working on. The planning part is I've got different parts.
Yeah.
And I've written it out, how I want each part to go. It's just now I just got to put it together.
Yeah. The hard part.
Yeah.
I could plan for years before I put it together.
Well, and that's another thing about writing. I don't want to get caught up, and I'm sure you don't, about planning and then not get it on paper.
And then you get so into it that it just never gets done. I have to make myself stop because I will overplan my book and have so much that like I work on it too long. And you just have to sit down and say, okay, I've got enough points. Now I need to put it on paper and get it all connected in a story.
Sometimes those points come along as you're writing. You go, oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's have you been before any of the local students any? Have you done any? Would that be something you're interested in?
Yeah, definitely. And I would love to talk to them because like my publishers and I have talked about like how important it is to me because I'm a young female author. I think that's like very important, and I want to reach out to a younger audience because I feel like reading is lost in the newer generations
Sure.
with all the phones and the tablets and stuff. And that's so important to me because it's such a fundamental. So yeah, I would love to reach out to the students and reach out to people. Yeah.
I think that's important, as you mentioned, that now we're in such a technological age that the writing is kind of going to the side.
Yeah, and I think writing and reading are so important, and they teach you so much that, yeah, I would love to reach out. And another reason, another big point to my books, when we do like the advertising for them, is I want to reach out to younger people to read this book. And like I hope there's like enough stuff in there because I'm your age that you really like about the book and you want to read the book. Yeah.
Well, and I also found out, I'm like you, when I was younger, I didn't like to read. I just didn't.
Yeah.
And then when I got into writing, I struggled. And then I realized, well, if you read other writers, then you can.
Yeah.
And it helps.
The more you read, the better you write.
Exactly, and that's what I found out in school. The ones that read a lot of books, they could write pretty easily.
Yeah.
And the ones that didn't, couldn't. And, anything else you want to add concerning your books or anything that's coming up?
Just keep a lookout. I'm sure we'll have something on Channel 18 when it gets closer to 2022 now.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor being on the show.
Well, I appreciate you having us, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brought to you by Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative, your full-service telecommunications provider right here in the Sequatchie Valley.